Few of us are experts in any given area. Some of us, maybe we could say we're experts when it comes to our career or some aspect of, the line of work we're in, or maybe we have a hobby or a particular passion, and maybe we could argue that in one area, or even maybe two areas, we are some type of expert. But most of the things that we think about, the things that we know, most of our knowledge, most of the things we believe, it would be difficult to argue that we are experts in. But there's always experts that we could look to. Like growing up, you're in class, you look to your teacher. If your teacher tells you something, well, it must be true, right? Because they're the expert. They went to school, they have a degree in this subject. And so because they have the degree, because they have the training that you don't have, they must be the expert. And so if they say something, it must be true. Well, right now I'm reading two books. I got one book on Jesus by Gary Habermas. He's a New Testament expert. I got this other book here. This is Bart Ehrman, also a New Testament expert. Now, Habermas, he's a Christian. He's a New Testament expert, historian. He has looked at all the evidence. He's got way more training than I probably will ever have in this area. And he believes that the New Testament tells the true story of Jesus, and that Jesus is actually God based on the evidence. But Bart Ehrman, also an expert, one of the foremost experts on the New Testament that there is right now, not a Christian, atheist, doesn't think that the New Testament tells an accurate story about Jesus. Well, how could this be? We got two experts, but they completely disagree about their conclusion. There's some points that they might agree on. They both think that a guy named Jesus really lived, but the nature of that person, what actually happened, they completely disagree on. And it has major implications for their lives and even for our lives if we're going to rest on their expertise. One would argue that you should give your life to Jesus. The other would say that that's totally unnecessary and probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but definitely not the way that he has chosen to live his life. So what do we do when experts disagree? I've seen, if you follow high-profile court cases on TV, you'll often see the prosecutor will come in and they'll offer some experts, and the experts will all testify as something that essentially he's going to say that the defendant, the suspect, is guilty, that they were the ones that committed the crime, that they left their fingerprints at the scene, or their DNA is there, or that based on their expertise, they believe that the suspect is the killer, or whatever the crime is going to be. And then when it's the defense attorney's time to present their case and try to defend the client, defend the defendant, the suspect, they'll often bring their own experts in. And those experts will say, well, maybe that DNA doesn't really come back to the suspect, or maybe the fingerprints were not interpreted the correct way, or maybe even if they were interpreted the right way, this new expert is going to provide some type of new testimony that based on their expertise, they don't believe that the client is likely the suspect. Or at least would have some type of reason to doubt that the first expert who came in, who talked about the same evidence, that first expert thinks that the client is likely guilty. The second expert believes they're not. This is very common. We will see experts on both sides of any issue. You'll see in the news, it'll say something like, the headline might be like, experts say, eating this type of food causes cancer. Or experts say this is the amount of hours of sleep you should get. Even if the majority of experts agree on any given topic, there'll always be someone we could classify as an expert who would disagree. Talking about these books here, both these experts believe that Jesus really lived, that a guy named Jesus really lived. Even if they disagree on the specifics of his life, they would agree that Jesus lived, and the majority of scholars think that. The vast majority of experts think that Jesus really lived, that he's not a complete fabrication. But there are some experts out there that would argue that Jesus is completely a myth, completely made up by the early Christians, whoever wrote the New Testament, whoever came up with Christianity, just invented it. There's always experts on both sides of essentially any issue, or almost any issue that we're going to come to. So what are we supposed to do as the layperson? I'm not an expert in anything. And now I'm trying to figure out the truth of a situation. So I go to the experts and they're telling me different things. I've seen some people, including Christians, kind of have a knee-jerk reaction to this. Like, well, if the experts can't even agree, then none of us can agree, and it's all just a matter of opinion, and we'll just throw out the expert opinion. Their expertise is not any better than anyone else's opinion. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think we need to take it that far. It's not to say that these experts don't have anything to offer. Obviously, both these guys, I'm reading these books, they have way more experience, way more time studying these issues than I do. So I can read their books and I can glean some information from them that I might not otherwise get. I want to hear their testimony. I want to hear where they're coming from. But I think it's important for us to consider their argumentation. Both of these guys, experts on any issue, they're going to explain all the expertise that they have. But ultimately, at the end, they're going to form an opinion. They're going to say, hey, based on everything that I know, based on everything I've laid out to you, I believe the most reasonable conclusion is X. Now, the experts might both disagree, but it doesn't mean that because the experts disagree that there's no truth of the matter, that there's no conclusion we should reach. Ultimately, they're going to come to a conclusion, and all truth, I mean, truth really exists. There is a true answer. You know, is Jesus God? There's a true answer. It's either yes or no. It's up to us now to figure out, well, which is the most reasonable answer to hold. So we can take their experience, even if we don't take their opinion. The ultimate conclusion that they reach, we can decide if their argument, if the evidence that they've laid out actually justifies their conclusion. That's part of why I want to read these books. I want to see what each person has to say, and I want to see, even though I have an opinion, I think Jesus is God, I still want to read both persons' experience. I want to see their expert testimony, and then I want to see the way they make their argument to decide if that conclusion is more or less reasonable than the one I currently hold. See, we may not be experts, but we still need to form our own opinion. We cannot blindly follow somebody simply because they're an expert, because, well, for this very reason, we know that not every expert is going to agree on everything. And even if there was complete uniformity of belief amongst all experts in a subject area, it doesn't necessarily mean that that belief would be true. There's always the potential that everybody could be wrong. So we should consider the expert opinion, but ultimately we need to take their statement, the teaching. You know, we go to class, a teacher teaches us something, rather than blindly accepting it and just, okay, that's gospel, I'm going to accept that word verbatim. We want to take the new testimony from the expert. We want to consider it in light of all the other things that we already know to be true. In light of everything else, in light of the totality of the circumstances, the complete evidence, what should I think of this new expert opinion, that new expert testimony that I'm getting? There's a lot of things that we can learn from experts, even if we disagree with their conclusion. And ultimately, this new testimony may influence the way that we evaluate the other things that we already know to be true. But ultimately, we're not simply going to blindly trust any person's opinion, whether they are an expert or not, based on anyone's authority. We want to take what they have to offer us and consider it in light of the totality of the evidence. I think that this is a reasonable, logical way to approach evidence, but it's also a biblical one. In the book of Acts, it talks about a group of people in Berea. These Bereans, these people, were Jewish believers, and now Christian missionaries are coming to them and they're telling them, hey, Jesus is the Messiah you've been waiting for. Well, rather than accepting the statements of these Christians, even Christians who are coming in and saying, hey, I'm an eyewitness to this, I know what I'm talking about, rather than blindly trusting these people, even if they're experts, rather than just simply adopting, okay, you said Christianity is true, I'm going to just believe it, they compared the new claims of the Christians to what they already knew to be true, the Old Testament. These Jewish believers said, okay, I know what I believe, I know what the Bible says, but now I'm hearing this new information. I want to compare this new information to the old information to see, does it check out? The Bible says that these people were honorable because they did not just blindly believe the words of the Christians, but they tested the new thing that they were hearing against the Old Testament scriptures, the other evidence that they already knew to be true, to see if it checked out. Now, these people ultimately became Christians, but the Bible says that they're honorable for incorporating all the testimony that they had, all the evidence, together in this way. I want to follow their example. When I hear the testimony of an expert, I want to hear it. I don't want to just blindly disregard it. Your opinion is different than mine, so I'm going to totally ignore it. Your opinion is equal to mine. Hey, they have something to offer, but I want to evaluate any new information I get, any new opinion that I hear, in light of the totality of the evidence that I'm already aware of.